The leather rose and the world shrank to a single hot sound, a crack that meant anything could follow. Elijah closed his eyes because that's what had always worked. Make yourself small, pretend it's a dream. Something older than fear moved into that crack and became a shape between him and the hand reaching down. The dog smelled like old summers and quiet things. He came the next day and the next, sometimes with a woman in a neat jacket, sometimes alone, slipping through gaps like he knew the soft rhythms of that house. He never made a scene. He simply sat where he could hold space for the small boy. A crayon picture changed the course of everything. A child in a corner, a woman with a raised hand, and a dog drawn in front like a quiet guard. The sketch crossed into a courtroom and turned hush into proof. When Elijah finally spoke, the first words landed like a small, undeniable truth. Someone had seen him.
He had learned the small, careful movements of a child who expects harm. Elijah carried his grief and his bruises lightly, like something tucked into a pocket he never opened in public. The town saw Delilah in bright dresses and polished nails, the woman who hosted casseroles and smiled with the kind of teeth that made neighbors compliment how composed she was. What they didn't see was the quiet that followed the door closing, the way Elijah's shoulders folded in on themselves, the way he spoke only to the old mare, Grace, who sat on the porch and watched him with cloudy, unblinking eyes. After his father's funeral, the ranch felt colder, the rooms larger, and Delilah's laughter at dinner often left him smaller at the table. When Mariana first came, she did the sort of polite things inspectors do: ask about livestock, joke about feed schedules, make notes on a clipboard. Max drifted with her like a shadow given shape. He had the slow gait of a retired working dog whose body had earned every limp, and his eyes held a patient file of human faults. Max didn't need noise to notice Elijah. The boy's hands told the story as plainly as any bruise. Elijah dragged a bucket of oats and the dog watched the way the small body tried to be heavier than it was. From then on, Max returned, sometimes with Mariana, sometimes alone. He learned the routes that mattered and the moments that required only steady presence. Delilah's cruelty carried the same dressing as everything else she did, a slash of charm over a hollow center. She could laugh at the mailbox and then call Elijah a burden in the kitchen. She spoke in barbed jokes, and when she thought no one watched, she let her anger fall on him. But the dog bothered her. "That thing gives me the creeps," she said once, fingernails tapping a glass as if she could scrape at the patient's Max showed Elijah. The dog's reaction was not dramatic. A low, measured growl when hands rose and a body that moved to close the distance between him and the boy. People who loved spectacle thought nothing of it. The ones who needed saving learned to read the quiet. Mariana's notes grew into a pattern that couldn't be ignored. She began to ask questions that Elijah couldn't answer in words, so she gave him crayons and a stack of paper and let the child speak in color. The picture he made was terrible only in its honesty: a small figure curled in a corner, a hand raised with a crude rectangle for a belt, and a dog in front, drawn larger than it should have been, like a guardian, painted bigger than life. When Mariana showed the drawing to the judge, it did the work that fear had been trying to prevent. It translated private violence into something the law could touch. The sketches were quiet evidence, but evidence nonetheless. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and late afternoons. People shifted and spoke in low tones. They passed the drawing across tables and looked at the boy who had not learned to make big noises. Elijah sat small in a chair that seemed to swallow him, and the dog lay just off to the side, grey fur catching the light like salt. Each time Delilah tried to laugh, the room tightened. Her public mask creaked. Mariana explained the visits, the bruises, the patterns, and then she let the child show what he had already told her with wax and paper. When Elijah found his voice, it was a narrow thing at first, like a ribbon tugged from a box. He said, "She never saw me, but Max did." Those words had the weight of a simple ledger entry, a fact the court could hold. Judges are often cold to theatrics, but certain truths are stubborn. The decision moved as slowly as the law allows, and then as surely as a tide. Delilah lost custody. Elijah was placed with a foster mother who kept lavender in jars on the windowsill and who had hands that made soup and fixed toys without asking why. Max came too, because some choices the world makes are small and right. The first night at the new house, Elijah did not curl and pretend. He lay down beside Max and let the dog's breathing count out an unfamiliar promise. He slept without the sudden jerks awake that had marked years of listening for raised voices. There were no grand ceremonies, only a blanket that smelled like steady things and a dog who had decided that his job had not ended. Days filled with ordinary mercies, a bowl that was always full, a laugh that did not threaten, a hand that tucked hair away. Elijah drew again and the paper bloomed differently. Flowers this time, long stems, a boy walking through wild green with the dog beside him, sky above open and uncomplicated. He handed the picture to Mariana like an offering and whispered, "This is a place where I don't have to be afraid to exist." Max wagged once, not the frantic wag of a dog who hadn't seen kindness, but the slow, satisfied wag of one who had done his duty and could finally rest. There are rescues that arrive with sirens and fanfare, and there are rescues that arrive in footsteps so small you could miss them if you blink. Max's rescue was the latter, a choice made quietly, a body that put itself between danger and a child, again and again until the pattern of protection became proof. Elijah learned to speak, but more importantly he learned to be seen, not by a crowd, but by a creature who would not look away. In the weeks that followed, neighbours who had never known the story began to notice a different light on the ranch road. A boy who waved back, a little dog who took afternoon naps in the sun. The healing was not dramatic, it was patient, made of drawings and sleep and the small accumulating evidence that someone cares enough to stay. In the end, the most radical thing was simple: someone chose to keep him safe.